And we're live. Welcome to Behind the Steel Curtain. My name is Mark Davison. I'm joined by Matty, Peverell, and we are Steelers Touch Down Under.
I like that
how's
one.
Matty?
Yeah, I like that one.
That hurt my throat just a little bit. How'd that go?
That was good. I like that one. You can do it
Yeah,
every
right.
week.
So today, I'm in the driver's seat today, guys. We're going to be talking about the AFC North, and our title is "What Players in the AFC North Will Be a Challenge for the Steelers." Basically, like, it's a big thing for me. Why I follow this sport, and I think maybe Matty as well. I've always had a big interest in the division, so I like how we verse our three teams every year. You get six games out of it, and if you win that division, you're a chance for the playoffs. Would you agree, Matty? In other aspects, how we follow the NRL, but division football is so fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't even think you have to win the division. If you're the second team in the AFC North, year in, year out, you are going to be in that wild card race, pure and simple. I mean, obviously, there's going to be seasons where, you look back on it, that, the team, if it was the Browns or the Ravens historically and the Steelers won it, they might be, it was 7-9 back in the 16-game schedule. But I think we're really in a situation now where the AFC North brings out the best in everyone. I think the idea of going 6-0 in the AFC North from this season onwards is going to be, for the next few seasons, with how good the Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers are. The Bengals, like, I know you hate them, Mark, but like they are, there's potential there if they can get a few things right. So I think the idea of getting that 6-0 in the AFC North is probably harder than almost any other division, in the league. So, that's a real achievement if you can do that. But I'd just be happy to win the division just personally.
Oh, 100%. So another reason why I love talking division football, and I was going to put in the title today, is this AFC North football the toughest division in the NFL? What are your thoughts quickly on that?
Well, I mean, obviously last year it was, you had three teams make it. So that shows you how tough each of those division games are. And I think if you go into a lot of the other divisions, you sort of sit there and like, okay, well, teams sort of have maybe one other rival or two other rivals. There's a team that they feel there's no win in the NFL that's easier, but that's easy. Sorry, but there'll be a game that you might feel is a bit easier, or that you've got your number over, that division rival. So I think with the AFC North, you look at it now, you look at how the teams tooled up in the draft, and I know we're going to talk about that later. You look at the fact that you've currently got, and that'll change soon with Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson, but you've got a bunch of quarterbacks that are on rookie deals, so they can spend elsewhere. Whereas we've got a quarterback. Now, Ben at $25 million is not, or just over 20, after the restructure. That's not that expensive when you look at some of the other quarterbacks around the league, but at the same time, that's a lot more than what the other teams are spending this year on their quarterback. So, and we know how tough the salary cap is. Imagine if we had another $5 million, currently on our cap, we would have been able to do a bit more in free agency, So you got to think all of those things in mind. But I think going back to your question there, AFC North is, for me, easily the toughest division in the AFC. And I think it's the toughest division, across the league.
I think just with Steelers versus Ravens have always been really tough football since I've been watching since a little fella, as well as now Steelers versus Browns is turning into something like a really heated rivalry. The Bengals can turn up and show up when they want to. They're a tough team, and they will play the Browns hard. They will play the Ravens hard. So I think overall, it's a pretty fun division to watch. And like I said, Matty, and like with ours, we watch the Bengals Eagles. Yes, we have teams who have rivals, but I just love how the NFL does the scheduling. How we have two sides. We have the AFC versus NFC, and you have those two teams fight all the way to the top, get to Super Bowl, and it's 1 versus 1, and winner takes all mentality. So that's why the theme of today's show is all about AFC North. And jumping into that, we're going to look into the first part of part 1 here. We're going to look into some players on each team, one on offense and one on defense from the AFC North, who might challenge the Steelers and who's going to be a real problem for the Steelers. So we're going to kick it off with the Browns. Go Browns, Bengals, Ravens. So firstly, Matty, who's a player on the offense on the Cleveland Browns who's going to challenge the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. I think you've got Odell Beckham Jr. coming back this season. You've got, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt are in there in the mix as well. So you've got a situation there where, sorry guys, just the dog jumping in the room. But you've got a situation there where you've got those guys on offense. I think Nick Chubb is the one that's going to cause the problems. The Steelers, we've got a great defensive line, but the interior defensive position as well. We got Alualu back as well. He's just going to be someone there that's always a problem for you. I thought they were going to use more out of their Austin Hooper, the tight end last year. I thought they'd use a bit more out of him. They didn't. So I think on the face of it, I'd pretty much have to go Nick Chubb.
I agree with you. So I had two players. I had Chubb and I had Landry as well. One, because I don't really trust. Now, I've got a lot of trust issues with the NFL. If you've been listening to our podcast over the last 6 months, I don't trust Wentz. I don't trust Baker. There's some other guys I don't trust. Now, I don't really trust OBJ. Now, the reason being is because, yes, he's a gifted athlete, but you can't put your whole NFL career on the one play that was played over and over and over and over with the one-handed catch. Yes, it was great, but I don't overly trust him as the real threat to be in that Browns. However, if you look at like Landry's play, he's a second receiver there, and he can mark up against our second cornerback as well. So he can be a bit of a threat and have a big game. And if he's open and gets a lot of yards, then if OBJ is being marked up one-on-one, then you're left with another good receiver who's taking on the number 2. And who's our 2 going to be this year? We don't know. It could be it's Sutton or it's someone else coming into the mix, because we thought we were good with the cornerback room in 2020. We thought we had the best ever, and then Nelson leaves, and so I throw Landry in the mix. But I agree with you there on Chubb. I think Chubb with our defense as well, Chubb's going to be. We got to stop him. If we don't stop him, it's going to be a whole new game.
The problem is that when you get Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, so Nick Chubb will absolutely barrage you, and then you get the change of pace a bit with Kareem Hunt, and then Nick Chubb comes back. So the defense just doesn't get a moment to actually rest, and I think that's the problem. That's where Nick Chubb becomes the problem, because it's not necessarily you can have your top line defense out there, and that's still a challenge, but then Kareem Hunt challenges them again. And then they got to go against Nick Chubb again. And then if the Browns get ahead by a touchdown or 2, which they can easily do, as you said there with Landry, or, I love Landry. I just think when you look at what he does in the AFC North, I've seen him go missing a little bit at times. But then you've got Hooper, and then you've got Beckham, and then you've got Rashad Higgins had a good season last year. They got a big guy. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is about 6'4" or so he can do some things as well. So you just look at it, and I just think it all opens up Nick Chubb. And even out of the short passing game too, to a degree, when Baker Mayfield moves around in the pocket, makes those throws. Like he made that throw on that 3rd and long last year that, if he hadn't have made, we probably could have won that game when he extended that play and it got down into the Steelers red zone. So yeah, I think Nick Chubb.
Awesome. And just got to interrupt here. We've got Owen David from the UK on Facebook. Owen, let us know what time it is over there, because it's 8:35. Oh, sorry. Almost 9 a.m. here in Australia. I believe it's about 6 p.m. in America. Let us know what time it is, David, in UK. But it's funny, Matty, because with the Browns, you can see that they're having they've got a pretty good team overall. And we'll go to the defense in just a minute. But I just think overall they've got a good team. But like I said before, I don't overly trust Baker. But if Baker plays well, this team is going to be very hard to stop.
Big time, because he's got targets across the board, and I think. You look at what we did, we might talk about that a little bit later on, but you look at what we did in the draft, and we gave Ben a bunch of targets at the running back and the tight end position in addition to what we had before. There's so much for defensive coordinators to scheme for. It's not just looking after 1 or 2 wide receivers and a tight end and a running back. You've now got 3 or 4 weapons across the board. The quality's there. So it's an interesting challenge for defensive coordinators.
It's just that they're the Browns and we still hate them, and they got to fix their owner issues, and they got to get back to a better rhythm. Looking to the defense, who's that one guy who's going to challenge the Pittsburgh Steelers on defense?
It's Denzel Ward. So the easy answer is to go Myles Garrett, right? But Denzel Ward missed a lot of time last year. I think what he can do in their secondary as well, the cornerback position. I mean, they've got Delpit, who missed some time too. I think he ended up missing the whole season last year. But I just think Denzel Ward throws a real big spanner in the mix. And Ben, Like, you can't get away with it when you've got a guy like that across their defense and the rest of their secondary. I mean, they got John Johnson III in free agency too. He'll do a lot for them at safety. But I just think you'll watch Denzel Ward pick off a lot of passes this year, and I just hope that we're not just relying on the first read and that Ben's having a good look when he's throwing downfield.
Yeah, so if Ben's a bit, Ben plays his old style. Like, Ben's a funny quarterback. He's a great quarterback, but there are times where I've said it before, 25 yards out and we need 3 points going to the half, and he throws up a pick, and you're like, why'd you do that? Why did you push that pass? So if Ward's sitting there, you can definitely pick him off. For me, it's going to be Clowney. I would like to see what Clowney can do on the other side, and on the other side of Garrett. And will the O-line pick him up, and will they protect Ben? Same thing, though. If Clowney plays well and pushes that pocket, it's going to force Ben to throw that pass. However, in the mix now we have is Najee Harris. How do we work him into it, and we don't have to push that pass as much?
My problem with Clowney, and I was a big fan. This, Mark. I said it so much to you off air. I was like, oh, do you just trade Bud, pick up Clowney, get something for Bud? I'm a big believer in draft capital. And, I know that what I'm suggesting, could be, heresy for a lot of Steelers fans. But when I looked at it, I was just like the numbers there and what have you. And then I looked at what Clowney did last year at the Titans, and he didn't do a lot. And I think the problem with Clowney is that he needs to be the number one guy. Like, he needs to think that if I don't play well, we're not going to play well. Like, you saw that with the Texans when J.J. Watt was injured. He was able to dominate some playoff games. He got them into the playoffs. I think, I forget which season it was. It might have been 2014 or something like that. But he got them in there when he needed, when they didn't have Watt. And he was the guy, and he had that alpha mentality. My problem this season is he's going into the Browns where Myles Garrett is the number one. He's the alpha, what have you. You could see what we call in Australian sport. We could see Clowney be a passenger. Just sit there for the ride and not do a lot. And when you look at the money they threw at him too, and the injuries he's had and performance he's recently had, and he's getting to that 30 mark. And I know that the Steelers, we've had a history of having edge rushers that above 30 and get a bunch of sacks, but I just don't see that in Clowney. So, yeah, I mean, great for the Browns if Clowney can come off. But I don't know if I'm a believer in that, though.
Well, that was my logic as well, because he's heading into a Browns team that has a really good defense. So I thought, at a guy like that, then if he turns up and then plays really well, that's even better for the Browns. But like you said, if you're going to a team that has a great defense already, maybe you can slack off a little bit and not play as hard because you don't need to be that number one role and not all the pressure is on you. But I thought, what a good chance to bring in a guy like that, put him on the other side, and those two big boppers up front running at Ben. And we need to keep Ben upright. But at the same time, like I said, if he's not passing it all the time and we have Najee in the mix, then it's going to change the whole dynamic.
Well, yeah, that's it. You hit it nail on the head. Like, if you take the amount of pass rush opportunities out, you immediately make it that much harder for them. And where you're right, though, is that they did a lot with Olivier Vernon last year, who unfortunately did his Achilles. So there's an opportunity for Clowney. I don't know. I just sit back. I'm like, can he make the most of it? It's not necessarily the opportunity for the other side of that edge rush. It's just, I don't know if Clowney will be the one that can really take that up, but we'll see.
That's fair. Cool. Any other players you want to throw out in the AFC North for the Browns who can challenge the Steelers?
I've got a few draft guys they got in the draft, but I think we will talk about that a little bit later on.
All right, let's move on to the Bengals here, and we'll try and wrap it up in about 1 minute. So we have the Bengals. I'm only joking. Who's going to be the Bengals offensive guy that's going to threaten the Steelers?
T. Higgins. I mean, you got a guy like that. Obviously, they lost AJ Green. They've got Auden Tate. They've got Tyler Boyd. But I just think T. Higgins, his size, his speed. We've got a new secondary. You're losing your Nelson. There's a lot of pressure on Sutton. Bush is back, but that doesn't really help with a T. Higgins. What they do with T. Higgins will be really important. And I think that's where some of these undrafted guys that we've got, guys like a Trey Norwood or I think it's Shakur Brown or a Morlet. I don't know. Is it Morley or Morlet? I haven't decided what that is yet.
His name's Arthur Morlet.
Yeah. So you've got that situation as well. Tremaine Edmonds there. The thing about Higgins is he's as fast as a wide receiver, but he's like almost as big as a tight end when you think about him. I think he's 6'4", 6'5", and like he's kind of like Kyle Pitts, but I mean, obviously Kyle Pitts is a much better, athlete at this stage. But that's the thing. So, and Big Marv in the chat said, says, didn't AJ Green get traded? Yeah, he his deal came to an end. He's with the Cardinals. But what I mean though is that you've got a guy like T Higgins who can do a lot. He can do a lot in the red zone, and I don't know, like I'm sure that guys like Jeffrey Benedict and Dave Schofield have the stats and their insights on plays last year. But anecdotally, I just got the feeling that the Steelers looked a little bit weak in the red zone at times. So that's where I think the T Higgins in year number 2 could be a real problem for him.
Well, that's very similar to why I chose Landry, because you got, who's the other guy? Jamar Chase for the Bengals, who got drafted. He's obviously number 1. So Higgins is going to take on that number 2 role. Is Sutton going to turn up and really play number 2? And our cornerback depth right now is different because Nelson is gone. We all thought Nelson was going to be there for a long time. So how does Higgins go there? My guy for the Bengals is, I think, is going to be a challenge. Or I think that if he kind of steps up and does a really great job, it will be a challenge, will be Joe Burrow. I think if Joe Burrow starts playing fantastic football, keeps himself upright and gets in rhythm with Chase and other receivers, then he'll challenge the Steelers, and he has to. Joe Burrow has to play to a competitive level to put himself in the AFC North competition. Number one draft pick. You've got year 2 is really hard, but look, the Bengals put him there for the face of the franchise, and now it's his time. He's not getting bled in or whatever for the next 2-3 years. He's the guy, so it's going to be a hard task for him. But he's the guy, I think, if he can challenge the Steelers, it'll be very interesting because we'll have much more closer games than we should. Now, in reality, I don't think that he will. But if he turns up and he's playing really good football, then it's another whole new game, because it's not just a rookie quarterback anymore. It's Joe Burrow, who's got, can do 300 yards, running touchdowns, throwing touchdowns, anything really. So what are your thoughts on Burrow this year?
Yeah, I think when we can talk draft later, I think they added a player that will help them out there. I think they added actually a couple of players that will help them out there. But I think you're right. It's Burrow can step up, he can make it a much bigger problem. I'm really interested to see what it's like, not necessarily the Steelers when they're playing the Bengals, but can the Bengals pick up wins against the other AFC North teams? So can the Bengals hold up against the Browns? I think this Bengals team could be a problem for the Ravens, personally, just because I think if Burrow can pass to the right guys, Jamar Chase can do anything. So by giving Burrow a guy like Jamar Chase, he doesn't have to throw all those deep balls, which then, and when you play a team like the Ravens, and then you don't have Marlon Humphrey sitting back there, Clark, some of those different guys that are just going to pick the ball off. So I think that's the real benefit with Jamar Chase. And then that really creates a real problem, I think, for the Ravens. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what the Bengals can do against the other AFC North teams, not just the Steelers, because what we need is the Steelers. We need the Bengals to pick up a win against one, if not like both of those teams as well, to make that a tighter competition as well if we drop some games. So I know it's getting quite technical there, but it's not always just what we do in our division. It's how the division plays itself.
Oh, 100%. And with that, the Ravens there, just as a quick side note, are the Ravens' arrow pointing down? Now, I know you've mentioned the Ravens quite a lot in the previous shows. Do you think their arrow is on the downtrend? Have they missed an opportunity to be a great team? And, where can they improve? If you've basically just said that the Bengals can beat the Ravens.
Oh, I'm just saying there's more. I'm a bit more hopeful than if I'm a Bengals fan than what I would have been, 6 months ago.
Really? Yeah, right.
When it comes to the Ravens, like I don't know. It's hard. They always do really well at the draft. They get guys on paper that are doing really well, and I know that we want to talk about drafting a bit later on. Obviously, they got Villanueva. I mean, they lost Orlando Brown. Villanueva's not Orlando Brown. They lost Matt Judon and they lost Yannick Ngakoue. They haven't really replaced those guys for me. They always seem to pick up a wide receiver, and they did again in this draft. Again, I don't want to go too much into that just yet, but you sit there and you're like, okay. And then you look at the running back position as well. Again, they drafted a fullback there that will help them out, a player that we would absolutely love if he was on the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they've got some change there. Mark Ingram's not back. You know, it is going to be J.K. Dobbins. I don't know. I don't trust Lamar. I'm just going to sit there and say that I don't trust Lamar beyond 9-10.
That's one to your list.
Yeah, I think the Steelers have got him figured out. I think he's, and I guess I think he's a better quarterback than what a lot of people think. Like, he can throw that ball, but I wouldn't trust him in a shootout. And I know that, you know, so yeah, for me, I'm not saying they're trending down, but if people think the Steelers aren't going to be a double-digit team, the Ravens aren't going to win 13 plus games. They're not. I think they're going to struggle to win 12.
Yeah, I think they started to figure out Lamar with that. He was in the red zone, and he went to go push the pass. I believe it was Bud Dupree forced a fumble. Yeah, I think they were containing him really well. But we'll almost get to the Ravens in just a minute. Lastly, the defense for the Bengals. Who's a player that's going to challenge the Steelers?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting question, Mark, because I mean, you know, and they've had turnover as well. It's. I think Jesse Bates, you can't really go past Jesse Bates, right? Like, what he does in the secondary there.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I like, and he's someone that's going to be there for a long time. They're invested in him. They're going to scheme around him. You know, I was just sort of looking there at some stats really quickly. I think the other player, though, that one to watch this season is DJ Reader at the defensive tackle position. He will do a lot of run stifling as well. But I think you got to go a big name there, and a guy like Jesse Bates, everything he brings to the position. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So mine's an interesting one. I have a theory or an idea that Mike Hilton might be a challenge for the Steelers. Maybe it'd just be interesting to see what Hilton would do off the edge, and very similar to Burrow. If he doesn't turn up and really play hard in his game, well, he'll just be lost and forgotten.
But question back to you then. Do you think that the Bengals know how to use Mike Hilton?
I'm not sure. That's actually probably part of the challenge, right? I don't really know what they're gonna. I'm still pretty salty they have him. He's a good bloke and came from me undrafted, but I don't know. Honestly, if they don't use him like the Steelers did in our defense, it was so fun to watch him come off the edge. Even when sometimes you knew he was coming, you're still getting there and put the pressure on. And maybe he wasn't so good in the coverage, so maybe he might be exploited in coverage. Because a lot of times I know on our defense, as much as I liked Hilton getting 3 sacks or 2 sacks in the game, he used to pass up huge plays, and then you're like, oh, mate, what are you doing? You're a cover guy, but he's a great tackler. Like, he did some fantastic technique, and the way he tackled people was just like unreal. Not as fast as Troy or something like that, but he had a good tackling skill. So I'm keen to see what he can do against the Steelers. And if he does know any of their traits or anything like that, or he's just another player that goes there and say, "Oh, you were a Steeler, now you're a Bengal." Oh well, you're forgotten about. A bit like when James Harrison went there too. He was just forgotten about for the year. You never heard of him. So
yeah, 100%.
Let's move into the Ravens here. Who's your offensive player for the Ravens? Who's going to challenge?
Mark Andrews. It's not even a question. I think he had like 700 yards last year. He's a problem. He's a big body. How many touchdowns did he have? He had 7. I just think when you look at what the Steelers have got to do, well, obviously we struggled to cover the tight end position at times over the last couple of years. I mean, and this is why I like some of the players that we've brought in this draft, because I think you need to pretty much say to Terrell Edmonds, mate, you need to just absolutely smack Mark Andrews. So
imagine if that was in the run notes, that was in his training package, mate. You got to smack Andrew. He's like, all right, let's go and do it.
Like, I just think it needs to be a homing missile there. I just think it'll be Mark Andrews. It's just
does Lamar use him a lot? I'm not a familiar idea. I don't know too much about Andrew. He uses him quite a lot in the
big time, particularly when they had Hayden Hurst there, before, and he's off at the Falcons now. But when they had Hayden Hurst there, 2019, and they'd set him up like these double tight end, like all the stuff that we're talking about the Steelers potentially doing. Mm-hmm. These double tight end sets, and you think they're running it, and then Lamar, gets out of the pocket, and you think he's running it, and then suddenly lofts this ball downfield. So, I just think for Mark Andrews, yeah, he's going to be a problem for the Steelers.
So he's kind of like their scapegoat, like we said with Heath Miller, or even though he might be.
But he's a genuine target as well. He's a real genuine target in that, like, the way he lines up and the way they scheme him open and all the rest of it. And he's a big guy. Like, he can make that first, he can get past that first tackle as well. Yeah, he's just going to be a real problem for him.
Here's a funny one, Matty. We've got our Raven mate, Aaron Butler. Mate, this is a show for you. You don't need to be bagging out the Steelers. We're giving you an idea who the Ravens can challenge the Steelers. So rather than say something negative, maybe try and say something positive. It might help you out. All right, so here we go.
6-2, 6-2, 6-2.
Exactly. This is the one where we're grabbing your players who can challenge the Steelers. All right, so my player is, for the offense, is Hollywood Brown. What are your quick thoughts on Hollywood Brown? I'll tell you mine.
Oh, 100%, mate. I mean, he had like 58 receptions, as did Mark Andrews. They both had over 700 yards. They had 8 and 7 touchdowns. Like, the thing about Marquise Brown is he gets open, and I think he would have had a lot of adjustment in that first year. And there's a big player that we're not talking about that's going to be really interesting, and we're saving him because he was their first round draft pick. But when you look at Marquise Brown, he's lightning speed, knows how to get open. Cousin of Antonio Brown, not short of a tip on, how to do well in the NFL. Hopefully he can not take a tip on how to do not well off the field. But yeah, he's a massive weapon for Lamar. And, you just got to think, imagine if you had like a Joe Burrow, right, in the Ravens. Imagine the ability for Marquise Brown.
It'd be so different. That's what I was going to say, because I know with Hollywood Brown there, I looked at his stats just before coming on, and he got 700 yards in 2020. He's a number 1 draft pick. He's going to his 3rd year. He can be a challenge for the Steelers. However, the Ravens are more of a run identity team, so maybe they don't use him as much, but he's not a big body up front. He doesn't really put on those laying blocks like Hines Ward did, but he's a really, really talented player, and he's number 1. So very similar to my other 2 players I've chosen. He can be a challenge if they use him the correct way, but they don't seem to do that. They seem to use your guys like Andrews and move the ball with Lamar with his feet. And they move the ball with the running game. So,
but I mean, they also have Miles Boykin, and I don't think he's used very well. Like you've always got to factor him in too. Like when he's in there, what's he going to do? I mean, he's 6'4". Did a lot. He only had 250 or so yards last year, but he's someone if they throw it to, he can make a splash play.
Yeah, 100%. So if the Steelers focus on shutting down the run, then it really comes into if they focus on shutting down the run, these players like Hollywood Brown, Boykin, if they can challenge the Steelers correctly and often enough, then the Lamar has to go to them. But he might not. He might not choose to do that. He only might choose to go to them on certain plays. That's why I thought if Hollywood Brown lights it up this year against the Steelers, it'd be a complete different game again. And the Ravens might be up by a few points. But if we know who they are now, and you say they're on the downtrend, we can take care of them. It's going to be not an easy game, but a game we know to expect, similar to what they did with us last year.
But you bring up Aaron's comment for a sec there as well. He's talked about Sammy Watkins. For me, right? You look at the wide receivers we talked about. You look at the wide receiver that they picked up in the draft. Sammy Watkins, there's better use of that money. And I know they went after Juju, and, you asked Jeffrey Benedict, he'll tell you Juju would have been perfect for them, out of the slot and what have you. But they needed to up it on the pass rush. They needed to do more on defense. Like, I think if they went in knowing that a guy like Bateman was their target, the wide receiver class was really deep. They got Tylen, and I know we're starting to go into the draft stuff, but they got a guy like Tylen Wallace as well. That Sammy Watkins money doesn't look so good there. Now, I don't know the ins and outs fully of that contract. I think it was about $7 or $8 million. I don't know what's, bonus and you're not going to get back versus, salary you can cut. But if I look at it and they went into the draft knowing that there were a number of wide receivers that they wanted to potentially get, that Watkins move is a question for me. That's not a smart use of resources. Yeah,
I agree as well with that. Now, in our last part here, the Ravens defense, who's going to challenge the Pittsburgh Steelers? Who do you think?
Yeah, that's what's his name? Is it Murray, the inside linebacker? Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up. I had his name just before. I mean, Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters are always up there, but I'm just trying to bring in that inside linebacker that they drafted last year. Oh, what was his name?
Queen.
Queen.
Yeah.
Murray's with the Chargers, and then they drafted Queen around him. That's right.
I was hoping there was a Murray because Queen's my guy. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's Patrick Queen. Queen. He had 100 tackles last year, 9 for a loss. 10 quarterback hits, an interception, 2 pass defense. Like, yeah, I just thought he had a really good rookie year, and I think he's going to be a problem for the Steelers going forward. Really problem.
Okay, you know what though? So he was going to be my problem as well, but I'm going to give you the solution. And
Okay.
I'm going to send this to Tomlin straight after. I'm going to find the video again, and I found the video versus Najee Harris, 2019 LSU versus Alabama. Najee runs like a fade route or a route from the down the side, and Patrick Queen has good coverage ability. However, Najee comes up and scores a touchdown, and for the win, I'm not too sure. But I think that will be a good matchup to challenge Queen for us. So if Queen is challenging the Steelers, I think Najee Harris will be if they're spying each other, will be a great tandem as well to watch. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, that's a great shout. I didn't know about that play, so that's some awesome bit of homework that you got there.
Neither did I till about 10 minutes ago.
Man, you're able to watch tape while we're live on air. That's fantastic.
I can barely watch the live chat rather than watch tape. No, look, I don't really watch too much college, but that's one play I saw, and I thought Queen was in LSU. Alabama plays LSU a lot, so those two are going to know each other. They've been playing each other for a few years. So if Queen's our problem and we have a new back like Najee Harris, it's going to be interesting. I want to see him run him over, don't you?
Oh, mate, I'd love to, but the thing that stood out to me with Queen, though, we talked about those 10 quarterback hits. There were 3 sacks as well from Queen. Is that you can be sitting there thinking he's going to sit back and look to disrupt those short passes, the middle of the field. But when they can scheme him in to rush the quarterback, that's going to be a problem. And there are guys that Aaron's rightly bringing up, like Marlon Humphreys, Marcus Peters, what have you. But for me, it's definitely Patrick Queen. Like, he's that linchpin there, and I think you've just got to always be considering what's he doing.
Aaron might as well type in the whole 53. Keep going, mate. If you type in the whole 53, I'll put it up in the next comment. All right. But every single person, I'll put it up.
Mark, you should ask for a super chat for that. The 50. If you list 53 players, that's like a 20. That's like a $20 super chat.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, that was great. So we did our coverage of who the players on the AFC North, who's going to threaten us. We're going to take a quick little break for 10 seconds here on YouTube. Join us for part 2. We're going to have Slinging and Slang, more AFC North football talk. Everything you can imagine is going to be next door. Cheers. And we're back. Behind the steel curtain. Welcome. Matty, you're putting me off, mate. How's it going?
Good, thank you. I just thought it would do. Dave Schofield has his nice little, Kylo Ren mask, and I've got a few Star Wars ships that sit near my desk. So just thought I'd float that past for all those on the visual side while we had a little break there. But I'm good. I like putting you off. You like to put me off, and that's just the bants that we have on, Tatch Down Under.
That's what we do as Australians anyway. Any workplace, any sporting place. I know when I'm playing pickleball at the thing, I try and there's some older fellas there about 50, 55, and it's just fun to, they say go easy on some people. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go as hard as I can. Getting, the band is fun. But you know what's even funner?
Talking Steelers.
Oh, that too. But you missed the segue. It's Slinging a Slang, mate. Hey? But talking Steelers is fun. But what's your slang this week? I've got mine, but I want to hear yours first.
I don't know if we've said it already, and it's something so casually. I feel like when I've been in America and I've said it, some people look at you like, whoa, what are you talking about? And then other people kind of get it, kind of naturally, it's different. But it's sunnies. So if we just go pick up a pair of sunglasses or whatever, and, you often buy them in America if you're an Australian because the import tax is a lot more expensive over here. But yeah, you're I want to pick up a pair of sunnies, sunglasses. I know a lot of people call them shades, whatever, but yeah, for me, it's just sunnies. And I just picked them up yesterday and I thought, oh man, I don't think we've covered that one on Touchdown Under.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do the Americans call sunnies or sunglasses? Do they call them shades?
Yeah, I think so.
Is there
I think they were doing a shade. I think they were doing a shade promo on Good Morning Football, and they were doing that. They'd have a segment where they'd all wear the shades.
That's probably because they're. Oh, I can't. I'm going to say it. Might have had a bit too Mary Jane in the morning. You never know. All right. Now mine's a little bit different this week with Slinging the Slang, and Matty should get this straight up. But we have a thing here in Australia when we go to the game, the NRL, the football, and when someone's scored a try and they're kicking a field goal, and when you're on the stands, what do you normally try and say to that kicker, Matty? Keep it PG though. When you're trying to put them off, you have any idea?
Well, you can say lots of different. Boo.
Yeah, but no, we can say boo. But I have this little memory from mine. So when I was a little kid, watching the Manly game up on the hill there, and a bloke was going for the conversion, right, or the play skill, or the extra point, and I wanted to know what the guys in America would say for this. So he told me to yell out "lolly legs." You ever heard that?
I haven't.
You never heard that?
No.
You mustn't have been there on the day then. So when when I was a little kid, like 12 years old, this guy next to me and my parents were there and stuff, and he's like, "Hey mate, like, yell this out, like lolly legs," and you just like it puts them off. And I actually read an article. There was an article in 2019 from Newcastle. A guy got famous on TV for saying it and put off the West Tigers kicker, and actually worked. So I wanted to know, do you reckon, do people yell out to Boswell or to Justin Tucker to put him off? What would they say?
Yeah, maybe they would say lolly legs. I don't know. I don't know if you remember, there was some controversy about 3 or 5 years ago when the Wallabies, the national rugby team, were playing in Argentina and they were going for a kick to win the game. So like field goal to win the game in the NFL. We call a field goal something different in rugby. And they lined him up and it was from like pretty much halfway. And a guy got a laser pointer and was like shining it in the kicker's eye, and then he missed. And there was a whole uproar about like laser pointers in the stands, like shining it in his eye and stuff.
That's a bit rough, though. This is more vocal.
Had like a military grade laser pointer, mate. Like he's halfway down the field. The guy's at the back of the stand. It's like practically 100 meters, and he's shining a laser pointer in his eye.
You can't do that. That's not fair, is it at all? Nah, this is more just putting up a player and getting in their psyche. But like, I know fans can cheer a lot of things at players at certain times. So I just wanted to know. I wanted to try and find the American equivalent, but here we are. Maybe we didn't. Do you want to talk some more Steelers or?
Let's talk some more Steelers.
All right, and you said in part one, and in part one, talking about the draft. I want to know more about these teams. So, and you're the draft guy. I'm just the guy. I'm just the guy. Yeah, a lot of pressure. I'm just the guy asking the questions. So who's the guy from the Browns? We'll start with them first. Who they drafted who can really challenge the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021?
Yeah, that's a super question mark. Look, obviously they got JOK there I think they got him early the second round. So that's a key piece from there. But I really think it's going to be Greg Newsom at the cornerback position. He's a player that, I know the Draft Dudes, which is a podcast offshoot of the Draft Network that a lot of people will have done mock drafts through if they were doing mock drafts. They sort of had him placed there as that he rated above 8 in every different criteria that they scored them against. So better than JC Horn, better than Patrick Surtain II. They were more outstanding in some areas, but he had the overall basis, the better average. And, that translate across to the NFL? I really thought he would be a smoky for the Steelers to potentially get, around our pick as well, depending on if Najee had been taken and a few offensive tackles they like to go off the board. When we go back there and we think about, a Grant Delpit, a Denzel Ward, Joe Johnson III, Greg Newsom's not under any pressure there to do anything massive this first year. So I think if they can scheme him right, I'm really interested to see what a sort of a problem he'll be. But it's hard to say until we work out what sort of role he's going to take up within their defense.
Yeah, fair point. He puts pressure under Ben. And you also said that Jock might be a problem too in the middle linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to play him? Where are you going to play him? Is he big enough? What have you? I don't know. I'm kind of keen to see. I'm kind of keen to see how it's going to work, though. You know, whether they line him up, like, because does he really have the weight behind him for them to line him up against like a Pat Freiermuth? Like, you know, does he have that? Does he have that against a Chase Claypool? Like, he might match him for the speed, but I love like the jump and the, you know, the vertical on Claypool. Equally, if you're running him, you know, through toward Ben, can you imagine if like a Green or a Dotson, you know, can get past and sort of, you know, block and, you know, sort of throw that defensive lineman into his way? I think it's going to be really interesting. And it's what I really like about Najee Harris is his blocking. And, you know, he'll obviously get better at that with the Steelers, is that if JOK is going to do some sort of pass rush through as well, I think Najee will be there to make a difference. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they do it and how they use him. But for me, I think Newsom will be a little bit better there. And then as well, they've got Tommy Togiai as well from Ohio State. He was the 133rd ranked prospect out of DJ's top 150. They picked him at 132, so that's pretty much a like-for-like pick there. You know, and he'll do some stuff for them at the defensive tackle position. So,
fair point. Let's move on to the Bengals. What draft guy for the Bengals? You know, a number one stand. Well, we have Chase. So is he number one standard who's going to challenge?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the way you've got to see it there. But, you know, as I talked about DJ Reader, they got a guy like Tyler Shelvin at pick 127. Sorry, not at pick 127. He was the 127th best prospect in DJ's top 150. But, you know, he'll do some stuff for them in the defensive tackle position. They picked him at 122. I don't think Cameron Sample, I don't know whether he's going to have that impact, but Joseph Osai as well off the edge, Texas Longhorn. I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. He could do pretty well for him as well. They're getting younger at that pass rush. So even if it's not in 2021 that those guys are a problem, they'll really be a problem, you know, in the forthcoming seasons if they can develop.
Fair point. And do you think that, you know, Joe Burrow will light it up with Chase and is that going to be a fairy tale ending, or are we going to crush that dream?
Yeah, so I think it's going to depend on how guys like, you know, they traded back. I think there was I heard a pundit talk recently and sort of suggest that they traded back and got Jackson Carman in round 2 once Landon Dickerson went off the board because they wanted a center to shore that up. And then they had, you know, they picked Trey Hill later, which is a guy that, you know, I really liked. I know Bad was a bit of a fan of him. Shannon White, one of the writers on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, he loved him as well. So, you know, they're interesting guys like that. But again, how are they going to adjust to the NFL? And I think Carman wouldn't be filling every Bengals fan with a lot of confidence, and he will take some time to develop. So that's going to be an issue for him.
I think the Bengals just need to get one win and they might have a bit of confidence. Now, as you said, what about Ryan O'Toole's comment here? What do you think about this? Those national guys are clueless. He's talking about the media. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the pundit that I was talking about was actually from the Draft Network. But if he's talking about Mel Kiper Jr., I completely agree with you. Like, really, what do they know? And this is the thing as well. Like right now, so I did a little bit of homework, Mark. People that have listened to any of my draft sort of roundtable stuff that was coming out, you know, within the first 2 weeks of the draft, know that we had five of our 9 picks are in the top 150 for Daniel Jeremiah. The Ravens had 4 by my count. The Browns had 3. The Bengals actually had 6. So the Bengals technically, you know, if you look at it, pulled in potentially the best draft if you look at listening to Daniel Jeremiah. Now, whether you consider that guy a national guy that doesn't know things, but that's what Daniel Jeremiah's feedback is. When you look at even the Draft Network didn't really rate the Steelers draft that high. You look at what Mel Kiper Jr. gave our draft as well. You know, people just go for the name that was there in college or the proven production. But how are you going to fit the piece within your team? Like we talked about Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton's a great slot cornerback. But that was for the Pittsburgh Steelers who know how to use him, not for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think when you look at it, and as we saw last year, the Steelers didn't have a first-round draft pick. They put Claypool at it wasn't in the 50s or something. And then they went out and picked Dotson in the 4th round. Those 3 guys made it into a redraft in the 1st round. we do not know what is going to be of this draft class for at least 2 seasons. It's something that we've said across behind the steel curtain, over the last 8 to 10 weeks. But if you look at it for the Steelers, as I said at the time, we got the running back. We upgraded our tight end room for the next 5 years. We got a guy that will develop into a center. I firmly believe that. You got Roche in the 6th, a bunch of undrafted free agents as well. Dan Moore could really be something if we give him time to develop. So I agree with that comment from Ryan O'Toole. The national guys, I wouldn't necessarily say clueless, but they're looking to say headline things. They're looking to talk about all the teams that are popular. It's not popular to say the Steelers are going to do well because we do well every year.
And their opinion changes every day because if you watch the NFL Live and those guys, they're on all the time, 24/7. Mel and those guys who do the draft do about 10 to 12 mocks from January. So they pretty much have to cover 32 teams and they cover everyone for every single possibility. And that's why their opinion is so varied and then it can also be wrong. If you only have a select opinion, like we and I have like one show, and we're not big media guys. We're just 2 guys from Australia hanging out. But we have an opinion, but we formulate on various shows and actually through BTSC and other Steelers shows. But I don't really watch NFL Live anymore. I can't watch the ESPN.
But you also got to think about what people are feeding things. In my professional work, I'm working a media and comms role, right? And, there's certain things that you will never disclose because you don't want your competitors to know. There's certain things you can't disclose if you're like listed on a stock exchange. There's certain things that you won't disclose because it's not necessarily going to be understood and received well all the time, depending on who you're engaging with, or even if it's just the audience that's going to be, whether they're going to read an article that's published or, watch a news clip or listen to a radio broadcast or what have you. Like you take DaCosta, from the Ravens. A week before the draft, he said that they thought the wide receiver room hadn't been well respected. Then they drafted two wide receivers in Rashad Bateman with their first pick, and then they got Tylan Wallace later on after they picked up Sammy Watkins, as I talked about, which is why I didn't understand, that being the case. So, for the rest of the NFL, they're sitting there going, the Ravens aren't going to be picking a wide receiver, or they're less likely to pick it with the top picks. They picked them both in the first round, and then I think it was the 4th round, and it was early in the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. So, you got to think those national guys hear things day in, day out, and for a lot of them, they're hearing headlines and sound bites. They're not actually hearing what's the strategy, or they're not looking to ask what's the strategy. And you can tell because you find that content boring.
Yeah, I do know actually. I do find the NFL Live and those things kind of boring. Whatever is not boring, Matty, we don't have a super chat, but I want to bring it up anyway. We still have to do the Ravens draft, but I want to bring up Awesome Stuff because this is a great question from Awesome Stuff. What were your first impressions of Pittsburgh, Matty? You go first, and then I'll tell my go.
Yeah, so I think when you're international and you're sort of going, I'm going to Pittsburgh, and people are like, are you going for a sports game? Yeah. All my American friends, I've got quite a few American friends, they told me you are going to be cold. They said, you have no idea how cold it is there. And I'm like, I've been skiing and stuff like that several times. Like, I'll be fine. Mate, we went skiing in Tahoe the week after we were in, Pittsburgh. It was colder in Pittsburgh than it was at Tahoe. I had my ski jacket on over my jumper and my shirt and whatever. That wind with those 3 rivers is, I like to describe it as bone rattling. Like it kind of goes through the layers and your bones feel cold. But what I loved about Pittsburgh is that everyone was so friendly. I don't know. I just experienced everyone was so friendly. It had this charm to it that I didn't necessarily expect. And I've spent time on the East and the West Coast, across 4 or 5 American trips. And I was just I just was like, how can I go back? Like, even we're big animal people. I think we talked about it before. We went to Pittsburgh Zoo when they were like, I kid you not, like in winter, snow around all the animal enclosures and what have you. And it must have been 12 visitors there, right? But when we had the best time, like it was freezing, but we had the best time. We had the best time anytime we went to eat anywhere. We had the best time tailgating. We were trying to meet up with Brian and or Bad and Dave, and we didn't get to align our times there. But we were walking around, talking to different people through the tailgate, watching the Steel line play. And I know that's a lot of Steeler related stuff, but I mean, we went in for a couple of days around a game there. And yeah, we just had an awesome time. We're just like, we can't wait to come back. We want to experience it more in the summer to start the season out. So hopefully that's something we can do, you know, in a few years' time when things get a bit easier, but, you know, in terms of COVID and the rest of it. But yeah, we really loved it. Then there was a real heart to the city that I don't think people often talk about.
Yeah, 100%. I agree that coming from an international fan, it took me 15, 16 years to get there. I call it my home. I've been there 3 times. When I first went there, I flew in from New York City. I landed in Pittsburgh, and I got there about 9:30 p.m. I got onto a shuttle bus. I can't remember what the company was called, but it doesn't overly matter. I got in the car. I was the only one in the car. Driving in there, the guy was awesome. He gave me a little tour. Not a tour, but he was talking about the city. And as we come into Pit Tunnel, I believe, when you come out of that tunnel, on the left-hand side, you see Heinz Field, you see the big city. So the first night was, didn't see too much, but in the morning it was cold during December. The idea was for Super Bowl 49. I wanted to be there in the city if the Steelers were in the playoffs, but I believe they got cut. I can't remember who beat them, but they weren't in there. It was Seahawks versus Denver. No, or Seahawks versus Patriots. Sorry.
Should have run that ball.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that, and I had a Seahawks fan next to me, and she was so sad. Anyway, so I went to Jerome Bettis Bar and Grill. You know, as an Australian fan, coming from so far away, and even a lot of guys in our live chat in America, you might be living in Miami or like real West Coast, like LA, and never been there. And I tell you, once you get there, it is an unbelievable city. Because I do love how it's so local too. You've got the point, and you've got the stadium, and you've got the PNC Park, but then you have the big city as well, and you can go around South Side and North Side. There's so many places you can go. It's easy to get around to travel. People are friendly on the game day.
But even that beautiful like ice rink that they build in the heart of the actual city, like, and there was a little street stall, set of street stalls to the side of it, and we just walked through there, and it felt like, you know, and particularly when you're in Aussie, Mark, you know what this feels like. You know, our Christmases are so different. We've talked about this, you know, during, you know, the different Christmas elements of the shows that we did and podcasts that we did a few months ago. But like, you know, you just feel like this, it's like this classic Christmas. It's what you sort of watch on TV as a kid in all the American movies and all that sort of thing. And so there was something really nice about Christmas and football, and it's all that whole family football thing. So yeah, it's awesome.
I was there Christmas Day game. It was unbelievable. So I got there at 4 p.m., I believe it was, or 3 p.m. Had no idea where I was going. Went around the corner, went to my seat, and I'm like, holy dooly, I'm here for Steelers versus Ravens. And I stayed back half an hour to soak it all in. And it's almost like seeing the Coliseum or something like that, something in history, because it is hard for an international fan to get there, even harder now. And there will be a time that you and I will go to a game when we're older, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, and like even the anecdote of, you know, my in-laws, you know, I always wear all this Steelers t-shirt and Steelers jacket and Steelers jumper and all the rest of it. So for several years, they just had me, and we lived with them for a while as well, always watching me wear Steelers stuff. And then we got the game, and we got there a bit earlier, and we got to our seats and all the rest of it. And so we called my mother-in-law, you know, from our stand, because she said, "Oh, make sure you send me lots of photos. I want to see, you know, Matt enjoying the game and whatever." So we FaceTimed her, right? You know, while she was at work, you know, Monday lunchtime while you were at this game. So you're crossing different time zones as we do every week on the show and what have you. You know, we're sort of showing it around, you know, and we have, I mean, there are NRL games as well that, you know, do have even more fans than, you know, 50,000 in those stadiums. So it's not like we don't have those big live sporting things. But even I think she was able to appreciate the glitz and the glamour and the light, you know, the football under lights of what we were showing her through that FaceTime video. So it's just an awesome experience. And there's nothing, I mean, we've got it, and it's embarrassing of how like energetic I am waving the terrible towel, but there's a video of me waving that terrible towel during Renegade for the first time. I got chills down my spine talking about it right now. The goosebump, the hairs in the back of my neck standing up. Like it.
Well, we saw it. I saw a Renegade twice, so apparently it doesn't happen very often. So the Christmas Day game, we had two Renegades, and my favorite memory. It wasn't AB. It was Lawrence Timmons up the guts, smashing Joe Flacco for the sack. Nothing better than the Steelers game, and that's what we all hope for as Steelers fans. We've actually rattled on a bit. So sorry, Aaron, we missed the Ravens draft pick. We can't get into that anymore, mate. No more time. You really should have put it at 53. A live chat for the people there. But look, it's great. That was a great question talking about the experience. There's one more thing I want to go into before we end the show.
Yep.
Is what player from the AFC North would you like to be a Steeler? Can be any team.
Draft pick from this season or current player on a
overall,
roster?
and any player that you wish was a Steeler who would be a great Steeler, and it shouldn't be Ravens, Browns, Bengals.
Oh, that's a massive question.
There's a lot of players.
There's a lot of players. Oh, wow.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah. For me, look, it's an easy one. I still wish that Mike Hilton was a Steeler. I know that he had to go and get more money. We couldn't afford him, but I still think the way that he played for the Steelers and off the edge, and even this year with that defense, he would have been a great player to really like. I think he can be a game changer. He's got bad coverage skills in some aspects, but he's good tackling. He's got a good heart. I think he's going to do okay for the Bengals, but would have loved to see him still play for the Steelers in this defense. Now knowing that we've lost Nelson, what do you reckon? Who you got now?
Ronnie Stanley.
Ronnie Stanley, right?
Yeah, left tackle.
Is he Ravens?
Yeah.
Is he the big fella? He's rated like number one.
Yeah,
number one, but he's up there, isn't he?
Yeah, that's who my pick. I was just going to look at one of the guards, Treader, I think it is, that's with the Browns as well. But we've got good. Like if you picked Ronnie Stanley up, and like Dave and Jeff and KT Smith might tell me it's silly from a scheme perspective, but I don't know. I just feel if you could pick him up and you put him next to Kevin Dotson there, you've got Joe Green. I'd really trust Stanley. And you watch the Ravens play impact when he went down last year with that injury. That was a massive impact. So yeah, I'd be picking him.
Stop the show, Matty. Stop the show. We've got another one. We've got another one with awesome stuff. I have to answer this before we end the show. Awesome says, what were your first thoughts on seeing American football in person versus TV? What a great question.
Well, I'd watched a college game. I think I've said before. I watched Hawaii play Cal in Australia a few years back. I mean, the NFL is a different game when you watch it. I know, like Dave, for instance, like sitting, behind the field, whereas I was sitting on like where were we? We were on about the 30-yard line, quite deep down. We paid a significant amount of money for our seats because, it's not a cheap thing to get over there. So you got to make it worth it. But I think, and I was almost going to say it before, so we went to the Bills game week 15, 2019. And I remember turning to my fiance Jess at the time and saying, I think Steven Nelson's going to get an interception here. Like, I'm watching the way he's lining up. And then what do you know? Like, he jumped, like literally the next play, he lined him up and he got that interception. Again, things like it was obvious to me, in my view, that Duck Hodges shouldn't have been playing that game. Like, you could just tell he was doing nothing back there. They should have put in Mason Rudolph. And then the next week he got, he got benched and Rudolph went in for the Jets game. So there's just stuff like that. You don't appreciate how big some of the guys are as well. So yeah, I think those impressions, but I always say that if you are not a fan of a particular team, and I've been to all the American major sports, hockey is the best live experience. But if you have an NFL team and they are your team and you're particularly if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, that experience, I don't know. It's better to ask guys like Dave that go all the time, but I can't imagine it ever gets old. There's something magic that happens in every game. And so, seeing that live would be awesome. I'd love to go to an afternoon game. They look really fun. And then you can go out after and have a couple of drinks and feel, talk about it and feel that fan experience.
I went to a 4 p.m. game. I went out after on Christmas night, but that was.
I want to go to 1 p.m. though. I want to go to 1 p.m.
Get on the day drinks, have a few beverages.
Yeah, have a few bevies.
Look for me. For us in Australia, our 1 p.m. game, or your 1 p.m. games are our 3 a.m. games. So it is a huge difference being in the stadium. I still remember when I first went to Pittsburgh, I saw an NFL game for the first time at nighttime. And that was, believe was when the playoffs were around, or might have been the Super Bowl. That's, to me, is different as well. So me and Matty can't go to each other's houses. It would be quite weird going there at 3 a.m. and saying, "Oh, shut the game on." We can't go to bars. We can't go to friends' houses. So when I first experienced actually watching the game on TV in America, that was cool because you're actually around people and you can watch the game and socialize, and it's at nighttime where we watch your nighttime games this time. So we get, I think it's 3 a.m., 6 a.m., and then I think 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. for our games. So, and then if Matty watches them before work, or I watch them before work, or on our lunch breaks, I'm going to try and organise some things this year in Sydney, because we might get those highlighted games we can get at 12 p.m. So it's a massive difference. But like for us traveling from overseas, nothing better than being there, and you just save every hit. And I believe I've watched that Christmas Day game a few times just to know I've been there. And even though with the AB, that was a tremendous catch. The catch that Eli Rogers caught from Big Ben in that Christmas Day game, like that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable. He stretched out and had a go. And you thought when the Ravens ran that fullback dive and they got up, I was like, oh no. So the funny thing too, when I was in the stadium, you feel like, oh, it's so exciting to be there, but you still want to win. If you still feel a bit gut hurt if you're down by 10 points, you can't be all all excited about just being there in the moment. But if your team's down, it still kind of hurts.
Yeah.
Matty, we've almost gone an hour and we've gone really far off. I think awesome stuff taken over the show with our experiences. I've got one last question for you, then we'll start to wrap it up. Let me just get rid of this for 1 second. What are your thoughts? This is kind of a side question.
Yeah, this is not. This wasn't on the playbook.
It's on my playbook. What do you think? Why do you think Baker Mayfield will stink?
Why do I think he'll stink? Because I think
it's more of an opinionated question, but
they're gonna have a bunch of they're gonna have injuries to guys. I struggle to believe that Beckham Jr. will play every game. I think the 17th game will be a problem for him. I think Stefanski will have a massive challenge in his second year getting these guys up for it. I think there was a bit of hype last year and he came in, he did a bunch of things. The thing that for me about Baker is, I don't know, I've seen this where he'll win a few games and then he'll go into a game and play terrible, like that pick that Minka, got. The thing about Baker, though, is you don't want him to get confidence within a game, because within a game, he can turn it very quickly. We saw that week 17 last year for the Steelers. So I think injuries will cost him. I think they'll focus heavily on Chump and Kareem Hunt if they can get ahead, particularly if their defense can make life difficult and stifle other teams. And I think he needs to get into a rhythm. And I think when he's not in a rhythm, that's going to be a problem. I also think that the other teams, particularly the Ravens and the Steelers, are going to will have another season of tape to figure him out. Both teams are always going to put up good pass rush. I think the Bengals are going to, they've tooled up with some young guys who will want to go after it as well. Yeah, I just think that that's sort of the reasons why, and Baker will have all the pressure on him this year. He got him to the playoffs. They won the wild card game. It's just dialing up that bit more, So good luck, mate, trying to get it again.
If he throws, or if he's 1-2 or throws a few interceptions, there'd be so much pressure on that guy. Even when he's winning, if he's 3-0 at the start, there'd be a lot of pressure on that guy. So it's going to be very interesting. Our last question to end the show, we have Snowman. Matty, I'll let you answer this. Do you think all the draft picks will be signed by minicamp, or will they sign before training camp? Or will there be holdouts?
Well, we've had rookie minicamp now, so I don't know if we're talking about like the other OTAs and all the rest of it. You're kind of silly to do holdouts now. Like the way that the last collective bargaining agreement, was fleshed out, you've obviously got you can go through it and you can basically work out all the salaries they can get. It's what you get ranges where you can have, bonuses and versus your actual salary number. So I think from that perspective, if people are holding out, there's got to be something in that contract they don't agree with. But these contracts are pretty like for like across the NFL. It's a different ball game now. And I think the difference in this too is COVID-19. You cannot afford to miss things in COVID-19. You saw what last year, preseason did for a lot of rookies out there. It made it very hard for a number of different players to get into the season. So, you could, let's say that, the Hall of Fame game happens and week 1 happens, but then whoever the Steelers have got in that week 2, I think it was at Detroit Lions or whoever it is in the preseason, suddenly that gets cancelled. you've lost a game. So if you were sitting there not being signed, and you waited till that week to be signed or whatever week you're going to sign, you might miss opportunities here. The Steelers are a top team as well. Like if we weren't a top team and the rules were different around the money and what have you, I could see, maybe someone holds out. But the Steelers aren't a muck around franchise. Like you want to hold out, if you're not like a first round draft pick or a second round, you're probably going to get, find it very hard for yourself, and you might not be on that roster. So, I don't know if we're going to really experience too much of that anymore.
Yeah, I reckon for me, as long as they just look, whoever's playing for the Steelers, I always say it. As long as it's competitive, same with like the new punter, you need some competition in that locker room, and that's going to generate wins. Matty, what are your final thoughts on today's show, or just the Steelers, and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, I think for Steelers fans out there, it's a really interesting time. There's not huge amounts of news out there, and so it's time to sort of take stock of what we're doing. Look, it kind of feels weird now. The media are sort of saying, "Oh, if the Steelers can get it right," it was the Steelers had a terrible draft, and the Steelers lost a bunch of players, and now it's if they can get it right, and you're starting to see the narrative shift. Let's just enjoy. I think we said this last year as well. Let's just enjoy the process, right? Let's enjoy getting to learn, getting to understand, getting to know these different guys. Let's be respectful of our opponents, and that includes the Bengals and the Browns. I think the Browns are not going to be able to repeat what they did last year. We just talked about that. I think the Bengals, there's interest in watching them this year, I think, to a degree, to see what they could become in the years ahead. I'm interested to see what that's going to be like. I hate the Browns the most. The Ravens are that, cousin that, you always want to beat when the family catch up for a barbecue and it's cricket or it's soccer or it's
that annoying cousin that keeps saying that they win a lot, but yet their stats don't prove to what they say. Isn't that right, Matty?
100%. Or they make it sound like they're the ones that have the good stats and they don't really. So there's that perspective there. Yeah, I just think just be excited, guys, because as we've said throughout this show, and it's been said before, rookies don't prove themselves in the first year. Great if they can. So let's get to understand. Let's get to learn them. I'm looking forward to seeing Matt Canada offense. I'm looking forward to seeing Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris do a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing Juju used right. He said that this week. The last 2 weeks. So that's awesome, and that's going to be really fun. And yeah.
100%. All right, let's. Thanks everyone for coming to Behind the Steel Curtain and the Steelers Touch Down Under. How's that? I don't even say that in real life like that. So
I don't even say it in real life. Do I talk like down under? Do I talk like this all the time? No.
Sounds like you're from Perth and you're a mayor out west. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the show. Thanks for coming to Steelers Touch Down Under. Great show talking to AFC North. Football. Check us out on all the podcasts. Check out our website, everything like that. Great show, awesome show. Me and Matty are going to go have lunch now. Cheers. Thanks. See you later.